everybody, welcome to Stamping with Melva. My name is Melva Peters and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from British Columbia, Canada. And you can find me online at stampingwithmelva.com. It's Thursday night, and every other Thursday night I do a live where I show you a technique. And then the alternate Thursday night I do a mystery challenge. So tonight it's technique. I call it technique, time for a technique. And it's World Watercoloring Month. So demonstrators around the world in Stampin' Up! Have been sharing watercoloring techniques. And yesterday I was very honored to be part of a webinar that we did for Stampin' Up! Demonstrators. And so it was all on watercoloring techniques. Now I did a technique that I showed you on a live probably a couple of weeks ago, where you take watercolor paper and you spritz it and then you stamp on it and just kind of let the magic happen. Or you ink up a stamp, spritz it with water, and then stamp. So I call that kind of abstract watercoloring because you really don't know what's going to happen with it. But I learned a very cool technique when I did this yesterday from a demonstrator in the UK by the name of Carrie Buckham. I'm going to say that's wrong. Buckham. I know that's not how you say it, but that's how I'm going to say it. Anyway, she showed an amazing technique where she created a background using her blends on watercolor paper, a very strong background. It's almost like creating a stamp pad out of blended colors. And then she used a wet stamp. And it creates that image. It's kind of like magic. Creates that image on the blended colored background, but then you can pick up the stamp and stamp on a piece of basic white or shimmery white or very vanilla. So I thought I'd show it. I had never seen that before and I was just fascinated by it. So let me switch over and I'm going to show you how this is done. Now I played a little bit earlier and it didn't turn out perfectly. So we're going to see how this works for me. But a few things about this that Carrie mentioned when she did the presentation. So I'm going to use the Honeybee Home because I really kind of like these images that I thought would look great because you're really creating kind of a collage image. Now this afternoon when I tried, this is a piece of watercolor, the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. And I took Tahitian Tide, Starry Sky. Oh, and I put it away. What did I had a green. No. I can't remember what the other color was. There was another color in here that I took. Something green color and I've forgotten. Anyway, I just created a very strong background image by just kind of blending, and I will do that. I'm going to use different colors. And then I used the cup of tea stamp. This one, if you can see, turned out, I really like how this one turned out. These ones, I had too much water, and Carrie did say a couple of things. One, she recommended using a rubber stamp and not a photopolymer, and of course the cup of tea is photopolymer. And two, she did kind of dry she didn't have big blobs of water, and I think I had too much water. So we're going to try it again tonight. But you stamp, and it kind of the magic happens, and the image forms on the dark background. And then you can pick up that stamp because this is so much ink in it, and you will be able to stamp on a piece of cardstock. So I really thought this was a cool technique. So tonight, I said I'm going to use the Honeybee Home, but these are the colors I'm going to use. I'm going to create a background out of Polished Pink, Poppy Parade, and Daffodil Delight. I thought that would be pretty. So we will do that first. Let's put that over here. And I have got a piece of Fluid 100 watercolor. Now, this is half a sheet. It comes as 5 by 7. I cut it in half, and then I cut, I think, 1/4 of an inch off of it, just so that it was going to be kind of the same shape as my piece of cardstock that will be on the first layer of my card. So that's my Fluid 100 watercolor. And then I've got a piece that I cut 4 inches by 5 1/4 of basic white. And that is going to be, I think that's what this is. Can't remember now that let's get my no, 3 3/4 by 5. That was slightly different. Okay, so this is going to be a layer on a second card. So when you do this technique, you're going to be able to create 2 cards with it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a strong background that is almost like a stamp pad. So I'm going to start with Daffodil Delight. And I'm going to pick up some, and then this is the Fluid 100 watercolor. So I'm going to go and just kind of put some splotches of the Daffodil Delight and keep adding it until you get as much color as you want. Now I want a fair amount of color in this, just so that there's enough ink that we can pick it up. Now I'm going to start with, this is my polished pink. I'm going to start with polished pink, and I'm going to go in and add color. So this is a great way. You can do this technique on just a piece of basic white. I've done this before to create a background. And so I am really just adding, like I said, bold, kind of a lot of color here. And I will go back in. Okay, so now I think I got, oops. And now I'm going to put Poppy Parade. Kind of just a splash of Poppy Parade, and I'll put kind of a big. Now, I think I want to go back in. So you can kind of play with this as much as you want. I'm just kind of going back in with a little bit of polished pink. And now my Poppy Parade and polished pink are quite similar in color. It's kind of lost its, I can see it, you probably can't, but it has kind of lost the polished pink look to it, but that's okay. All right. So that's what the first step is to create this. Hello Nancy, hello Johanna. So you want to create this background. Like I said, this is really your ink pad from this point on. Now you want some paper towel, or I've got a couple of baby wipes that are quite dry. And then you want your other piece of I've just got a piece of basic white. Now I pulled some stamps from the Honeybee Home. So I've got this long stamp, I've got these little tiny flowers, and I've got the bumblebee. So that's what I'm going to be creating a collage from. I've also got my spritzer. Now I've got this marked with water because I've actually got some that are filled with alcohol. And the other day when I went to do my watercolor technique and practice, I spritzed my paper with alcohol, and I couldn't tell that's what it was until, of course, I spritzed it, and then I could smell the alcohol. So I just took a Sharpie and labeled these. Okay, so I've got that. Okay, so let's try this. I'm gonna use the biggest stamp first. Now, what you want to do is spritz your stamp, and I'm just gonna do it off camera. So I've got the water on my stamp, and I'm just gonna take and wipe the excess off. I think I'm just gonna blot it slightly, just so it's not quite so wet. I've got this, it's quite dirty actually. I thought I cleaned my stamps. All right, let's do this again, because I got black coming off. All right, let's do this again. Okay, so I've wet my stamp. I'm gonna wipe the excess, blot it just a little bit so I don't get the water like I did pooling. And we're just gonna take and lay it on, and we'll see how this goes. Just kind of leaving it there, and then I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna stamp on this one. So this one's obvious, and you can see, so it definitely picks up some of the ink from this And you can see as it starts to dry, you're starting to see that flower image or that stem image. And it's not too bad here. I am going to blot a little bit just to pick up some of this water. Maybe that was part of what I didn't do earlier when I was playing, is pick up the excess water so it can't kind of flow out. And you can really start to see as it dries that image come to life. It's quite cool. I just was fascinated by this technique. All right, we're going to repeat this. I'm going to wipe this down. So we'll just kind of tap that down a little bit. And we'll go over here. And I'm just going to leave it. I don't remember how long Carrie actually left it, but pick it up. And then we'll take and lay it down. Now I didn't pick up as much on that one, but you can just faintly see parts of it. So this you could take and do some watercoloring and just color in some of these spots. And yeah, so I didn't get as much of that flower. I think I blotted it too much. So this is a bit of trial and error. I think I was more successful when I did it before and just kind of tapped it a little bit as opposed to blotting it. This is quite down. So let's see if we can add a little, keep a little bit more water on this. Now I'm not going to do the full one, and then I'm going to switch over to my bumblebee and my other flowers. Ooh, that's very wet. Hopefully that picked up. Yeah, that definitely picked up more ink. All right, so I'm going to just take and pick up some of this excess water. All right, so I've got some images there. All right, let's switch and do the bumblebee, because he's kind of a cool image. And I'm going to clean this. Okay. All right, spritz him, dry him off a little bit. And let's just do him right there. It's a very subtle image. And let's do him there. Ooh, he definitely turned out really well on this one. Let's just pick up some swatch. All right, let's try that again. And put another bumblebee on my. So I think part of the trick is to make sure you don't have water, big puddles of water on your stamp and around your stamp on your block. I don't know, has anybody tried this technique before? I had never seen it until yesterday. I was just fascinated by it. All right, let's just put that there. Definitely picking up the color. All right, so oops, let's take some of this water off of here. All right, oops. Now, the other stamp that I pulled off is these little flowers. I thought maybe would be kind of cool to fill in some of the gaps. So let's see what they look like. Inking that or watering that up, wetting that. Okay. And we'll just kind of stamp it there. So this might take some practice, but it's kind of fun to see. And watercoloring for me is kind of about letting the magic happen. When you do the technique that I showed, where you wet your watercolor paper and then just let the color flow with the water because you've inked up your stamp. It's just so magical. So I love it that you don't actually know exactly what's going to happen.
when you have it. Now that may bother people. There's some people on the webinar yesterday that my technique, I think, really bothered them because it's just kind of, you don't know what's going to happen with your stamps and how the water is going to flow, or the ink's going to flow in the water. All right. This is very subtle. I quite like it. This is kind of a cool stamp, this flower image. Let's see. So I'm just going to repeat this until I think this might be my last one. Let's do it down here. So hopefully this is quite yellow. This one, because I picked up mostly yellow, I think. That's quite wet too. All right, let's pick up some of this water that's on here. All right. Now, I think that's all I'm going to do. This is kind of a subtle image. I don't know if you can see, you know, some of that bee turned out really well, and this flower. So you can see some of these are not as obvious as others about what they are. It seems that my first attempt actually is best. Now I'm just going to take my heat tool. This will be loud for a minute, and then everything will go silent. Hello. Yeah, so that's watercolor paper, Susan, and I took my blending brushes and just created a very solid background and quite a lot of color with Daffodil Delight, Poppy Parade, and Polished Pink on watercolor paper. Oh, all right. I have to plug my heat tool in. That probably would be a good step to start with. Let's go find the plug. Yeah. There we go. There we go. So I'm going to just take it. I'm going to just put this on. I'm going to put it on high because I'm in a bit of a hurry. Just going to dry it a little bit so that I can kind of put the card together. Maybe this one is, that one's pretty dry. All right. So now I've got two pieces here. I'm going to create a card I'm going to create a card with this one, and then this one I will save, and I will create a card with another day. But I'm really liking this one. I might cut this one up a little bit and use to create a card. So I pulled, I pulled some Daffodil Delight and Poppy Parade. So I've got my piece of Poppy Parade should be 4 1/4. Yeah, 4 1/4 by 11. And I'm just going to score it at 5 1/2. And fold on the score line. Fold into the mountain. Okay, so now we're going to put this. Now I'm going to take, I've got some memento, and I thought was just going to stamp my sentiment, and I pulled the Miss You from this Honeybee Home. And so I'm going to just, yeah, it's dark. I'm going to stamp the Miss You right onto this watercolor paper. Like that. I thought the black would just show up and pop. And the other thing I grabbed, because I thought black would really pop on here, is this great black and white gingham ribbon. So I'm going to, let's adhere this on first. This is going to be a very bright card, but I love it. So I think it will take some practice. So we talked yesterday on the watercolor webinar about, you know, do people take and use watercolor paper or shimmery white, or do they actually practice on scraps of grid paper, for example? But one of the things, as I said, with watercoloring in general is you don't necessarily know what's going to happen with it. So it would be a shame to do an amazing, first of all, grid paper is not the same as using the amazing paper that Stampin' Up! Has. But it would be a shame to create this amazing thing on grid paper and then not be able to recreate it on good paper, on watercolor or shimmery white, for example. Just because sometimes you never get it the same twice. Actually, let me see, where do I want my bow? I think I want my bow on this left-hand side. Let's tie a bow to start with, and then we can see where we want it. So as always, when I tie a bow, I tend to turn it upside down because I can control where my tails go. So I can keep this tail facing towards the bottom, and I can make sure this other tail stays down there as well. I can get this, there we go. Turn it around, and then you can fuss with the ends and get your untwisted. Sometimes they do twist. There we go. And make sure you tie it tight when you finally, roughly get it into the size you want. Just give it a really good tug, and that will keep its shape. There we go. Okay, and now I can cut my tails. Gosh, that's pretty. Wow, it's bright. It's very pretty. At least I think it's very pretty. Again, so one of the things I said yesterday, and I know I've said this before, is don't give up on it. Because like I said, you don't know necessarily what you're going to get when you do watercoloring. And so don't give up on it. Walk away from it, come back to it, and you may find that you love it. It takes a bit to kind of get in the groove of it, but yeah, just kind of walk away, come back to it, and you might find that you really love the card you created. Now you probably are having a harder time seeing all these kind of shapes and images, but it does really show in person. All right, now I have another piece here. Let's take and stamp the bumblebee. Clean this off. I'm going to just stamp the bumblebee in Memento on the inside of the card. And then we will, that's the right size. Wouldn't be the first time that I started to put glue on something and realized that I had the wrong size in my hand. I think I did that just the other day and had to try and clean all that glue off my paper trimmer. All right, so there's the inside of the card, and then I grabbed, let's just keep going bold. I grabbed some of these glossy dots. Now I've used on this package all of the pool party ones, but let's, oopsie. This is Melon Mambo, and I'm thinking that's not the right color. So let's use the Daffodil Delight, and we'll just make sure we put them on the spots where it's pool Poppy Parade or Polished Pink. There we go. Yeah, it is kind of like sun prints, where you take something and like a leaf and put it on a piece of cardstock. So we've got some designer series paper that kind of looks like that as well. But just a fun technique. And as I said, I think I'll have to practice some more, because this one, the very first one I did, seemed to turn out, and then some of the bees turned out better than some of the other ones. So I think I'm going to have to do some practicing. And I think this one will be very pretty. I actually did pull out some paper for this, so that I've got Daffodil Delight and Polished Pink for this one. So we'll see what we do, and I will share this on my Facebook page. It's definitely not as bright. It's kind of like, I don't know, I have to think about this one. Might have to walk away from this one for a bit, because it's going to need something else, and maybe it's the Polished Pink that isn't grabbing me on that one, but I will put something together. Oh, and then I will do something with these ones at some point. Right. Okay, so as I said, World Watercoloring Month comes to an end in July, but that doesn't mean you have to stop doing watercoloring techniques. So yeah, play around with them. I will continue. I probably will show some of the other techniques that I learned yesterday, because there were some other ones that I had never done before. So we will play around with that, and I will show you some more on upcoming lives. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. I will be live on Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific, so hopefully you can join me then. And I will also be live on Sunday now. And I know it's a holiday weekend here in Canada. I don't think it's a holiday weekend in the US and maybe other parts of the world, but hopefully if you're able to take the time and spend, maybe you're going away camping. It's very hot here, and so hopefully it'll be cooling down where you are. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. Happy stamping.